So my staff pulled together a talk, and so we went through it a few times. We iterated through, try to get you a sense of what DoD does, who DoD, what DoD is, what they do, and also really to honor you as students that are going into a science-based career. It's I think it's it's not, it can't be said enough that our nation is dependent on science and engineering as a to maintain its global competitiveness and its global leadership. And so, what you represent is a small fraction of that science and engineer core that is going to, keep this country at the top of its game. So, let's see. Okay. And then also remember that science is pretty much everywhere now. You can't get away from it. Even if you wanted to, like now everything is connected. You're all connected. Even your refrigerator is probably going to be connected to tell you, when you're running out of milk and what to order at the store. So it's you can't live a life now without having some basic understanding of scientific principles. And so it's really important that that not only that you are interested in science, but you maintain that for some length of time. And I think most of you hopefully will stay in a science career, but if not, that's fine too. You'll find a lot of scientists and engineers in the back offices doing a lot of the calculations for Wall Street, the economists. It's a strong scientific background for economists as well. So there are a lot of, I think the other advantage of having a strong basis in a scientific field is that there are a lot of options and offshoots and off-ramps that you can take from that career. So with that, I wanted to start with a short video. Let's see if it'll play. I was told it would play.
Hey, I've got a great idea for a business.
That's exciting. Tell me about it.
I've developed a chemical isomer that links to volatile organic compounds causing carbon bonds to rupture and wraps them in a nanotube coating.
Huh. That's a little confusing. Can you dumb it down for me?
Sure. What I do is I take a proprietary isomer that I developed with a picric acid wash that hollows out the carbon bonds and replaces them with a nanotube wrapping.
Okay, so I guess it's pretty technical.
Oh yeah. I've been working on this isomer for 9 years.
So what's the business idea?
To sell it.
To who?
Everybody will want one.
What for?
So they can wrap their volatile organic compounds in carbon nanotubes.
I think you might need a target customer. I don't think I need to wrap my compounds in your nanotube.
Well, maybe not you.
So, for people who buy it, what's the value you are providing them?
I've developed a chemical isomer that links to volatile organic compounds causing carbon bonds to rupture and wraps them in a nanotube coating.
You've said that already. This is getting annoying. Why should anyone care about your isomer?
I spent 9 years on this.
I know that. Okay, pretend I'm an investor. How can I make money off your product?
By selling it.
You're a smart guy, but try not to think like a scientist. Think like a business person.
Okay. Value chain. Term sheet.
I have to go now and answer that.
That's not your phone.
I know.
Oh, hey.
So I'm sure a lot of you have had conversations like that. But this video we'd actually used at a couple weeks ago at a technology transfer conference that my office hosts. And what we were trying to do is just trying to get their scientists and engineers at a laboratory to think about how they would market their technology. And so this was kind of like a bad example. Okay. So I want to start with just by talking about some of the things that you may not have known have basically derived from DoD, from the DoD, either DoD investment or DoD research at one of our laboratories. But the ENIAC was the first electronic computer that was capable of being programmed. That was actually a Department of Defense funded effort during World War II. And so there was a laboratory in the DoD that was aptly named the Ballistics Research Laboratory, and they were looking to how to accurately calculate artillery projectile trajectories. So think about a system. It probably it occupied the space of a fairly large room. You can do that now these days. I mean, if I don't know how many of you even know or remember Angry Birds. That was not that long ago. Angry Birds, right? I mean, it does the same thing, but in a much smaller package. Another DoD innovation was the Global Positioning System, GPS. So in the early in the 60s and 70s, it started off as a Navy program where they were looking at how they could track their ships, enable them to better locate their ships. And so it eventually developed from that into a constellation of satellites. And then eventually in the Clinton era, the system was opened up for commercial use. And so now you see it's almost everywhere. In fact, I don't think anyone, I don't even know what the market is for like the devices that are pictured there. Everyone has that same capability now in their phones. Another DoD innovation was ARPANET. So it's the predecessor to our current internet. So it was ARPA was the Advanced Research Project Agencies, which is is the same. It's a predecessor organization or just a renamed organization for DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. And they were looking at how they could tie together researchers at various universities and have them collaborate. And so from that, they were able to create a protocol, the TCP/IP protocol, Transmission Control Protocol, to allow the professors at these universities to talk to each other. And that was back in 1969. In fact, I believe the first message that was sent over that rudimentary ARPANET was from a student at UCLA. And then things like Siri. Siri was actually another program that the DoD invested in. And it started off as a program where the DoD was looking at how they could develop a cognitive agent that would help the military learn, and how an agent that would help them make decisions. And it started off as a project to help, and part of that was an oral user interface. And so that eventually turned into, through the Stanford Research Institute, Siri program. So that was another invention that started off with DoD research. And then another, and this was an interesting one, duct tape. So how many of you would you guess? How many of you would guess that duct tape originated in the DoD, and what its application was for? So duct tape actually was developed in World War II again. And what it was what was developed for was that soldiers needed something to seal their ammunition cases from water. And so they developed this tape that they could put around their ammo cases and seal the cases so they wouldn't get waterlogged. And eventually, it developed into a commercial product. It's ubiquitous. It can fix pretty much anything. If you have a hose on a car that's broken, you use duct tape on it. It'll fix that. So there is a lot of innovation that stems from DoD and DoD applications. And so while you might think that we're only looking at that military purpose, in addition to that, we also actually sponsor a fair number of STEM events. And so, in fact, tomorrow and the next, actually Friday and Saturday, I'm actually going to be out at an event for the first robotics competition. And so I'll get to see them in action. We've actually done some video from a previous competition, I think earlier in the year, and we've turned it into something that basically we can get other students that are interested in robotics. They can actually virtually walk through a first competition event that was held, I think, this year. But I'll be up in New Hampshire on Saturday for one of their events. So we have a focus on many areas, and I think one thing is like I don't want to shortchange our military folks, in that we also do a fair amount of military research. It probably surprised you that most of the techniques that are used in emergency rooms stem from some military work that the DoD was doing. And the DoD has a different, started off with a different application. They're looking to extend the golden hour, or the time that when a soldier or a soldier, sailor, Marine is injured, to the time, to extend that time so that they can actually get that person from a battle zone in a hospital, and they want to be able to extend that 1 hour, or that time that the individual would lose. And so from all of that research, they were able to translate that into most of the trauma care, a lot of the trauma care that you see in emergency rooms. And then more recently, what you see is that actually the DoD had a fairly large role in terms of the Ebola virus. They were working with DARPA and a small company, and came out with a very I think an effective vaccine for Ebola that was being implemented in West Africa. And so if you ask yourself, why does the DoD care about military medicine, and you take a look, it's like we're deployed in a large number of countries across the world, and so what happens is a lot of those countries don't, there may be more viruses that are virulent in those countries than they are in the U.S. So in terms of keeping our military healthy and safe, which is a priority. That's why there's a focus on military medicine in terms of eradicating diseases and such. So then, to get you a sense of my role and why I was invited here. So I'm actually I have multiple roles, but I'm the director of laboratories for the DoD. So I have oversight, and I do policy craft policy for all of the laboratories in the DoD. About 63 of them, with about 40,000 scientists and engineers that work at those laboratories. And they're spread all across the country. I think 25 states plus the District of Columbia, and we, in addition, not shown here, is we also have a number of laboratories, field laboratories, particularly for our military medicine centers. We have facilities in Thailand, in Georgia, and in Africa. And then we also have research, not necessarily research centers, but centers in other nations, in Japan and the UK, that take a look and reach out to the international community to see what's developing and what's at the forefront at the international community that the DoD could use and harvest. We hope there's a fair, the breadth of work that goes on is quite vast. You get anywhere from hypersonics, directed energy. So the direct energy could be either microwave or it could be lasers, autonomous autonomy, autonomous systems, artificial intelligence, human performance, cyber, electronic warfare. So it really spans the spectrum of research and development. And so my role is to enable all of those laboratories to function. So in particular, anything related to their personnel, I craft policy for, whether it's how they want to hire the personnel, whether they want to be able to do it in a more expedient manner. So it's kind of, it's like dirty laundry, but hiring in government is very slow. I think any number of reports will articulate that. Hiring in the DoD has been a little bit better, and mainly because we've been able to both craft policy and get Congress to allow us some authority to do direct hire. So we've been able to offer positions to individuals within a day or two. Now, the truth be told, there's still some delay in terms of when that position starts, because there's still an issue for all of our laboratories. We have security clearances that individuals will have to get and clear. So that takes some time, I think. So there's still some time associated with that. But in general, the DoD can hire scientists and engineers at a much faster rate than the other government organizations. So I think we've been fortunate in that vein. But I also have responsibility in terms of infrastructure, how we manage our infrastructure, how we update our infrastructure. There is I think the DoD has infrastructure investments, a lab portfolio that's probably close to like $60-70 billion in terms of buildings. And so my role is to craft policy and how they update their buildings, how they recap, sustain their infrastructure, and how they can do that in an expeditious manner. Our buildings, I think on average, are about 50 years old, so we don't have new buildings, but we have anything from built and opening this year to ones that are actually on historical registers. We have some buildings that are in historical registers. So in terms of the capability, I got another video. Let's see how this one works. I think of our labs as the engine of innovation for the DoD. We have a very large scientist and engineer workforce. They want to do something that impacts the nation's security. They want to do something that helps, and that's what draws them into the laboratory.
We kind of get a taste for everything here, from basic research that you might think of you do at a university, all the way up to an applied system that we put onto a plane or a ship.
There's really nothing else like it in the world.
People are always the greatest asset that we can have in the Department of Defense. It is the people that bring their diverse backgrounds to solve these problems.
I work on F-18 weapons testing.
I work in the field of satellite communications.
And I specialize in mathematical psychology.
We're able to look at things that take place in the real world and recreate them here and see how things are viewed through a soldier's eyes.
I'm not just working on designing one bolt for one platform. I'm actually working with the entire aircraft.
It's just a great, encouraging environment that I think fosters the best work possible.
They took me to a laboratory, they opened the door and they said, "This is your laboratory." And they allowed me the freedom to move forward and do all these great discoveries.
You're surrounded by fabulous people who are really just interested in promoting and forwarding science.
The Division of Experimental Therapeutics has produced every major anti-malarial drug that has been used in the world since World War II.
We wouldn't be doing the basic research if someone already knew what it was. So we're really pushing the limits and trying to understand what no one has understood so far.
we get to work on really cool projects and really cool technologies. And more than that, you are part of a family, you're part of a network.
I have the best team, hands down.
We do it as a team. You're never alone. If you need help or if you have a question, all you have to do is reach your hand out.
It's like everybody's actually firing on all cylinders and they're all working for the same goal. And so you get to be a part of that.
I wanted to go back to school and get a Ph.D. in electrical engineering. My supervisors encouraged me to apply for scholarship.
The SMART program actually gives you a stipend to go to school, and they pay for classes. It's kind of like a scholarship, and then you have a guaranteed job. There's no better thing to have a guaranteed job when you come out.
My education's furthered, and other classes related to my field, they don't just pay for them, they'll tell me about them and send me to them.
There are great job opportunities, great opportunities to serve your country. They're looking for bright minds that can look at new ways to solve problems.
I'm not in the military, but I am serving my country in some way, shape, or form.
It's exciting to be able to do something that might actually help.
I will say 3 words: learning, challenging, and rewarding.
I walk in every day and I see the American flag backdropped against the sunrise.
I found a job that I can see where it makes a difference.
It's a great feeling to be helping the country out and being able to do it in your own way.
We are looking for the best and brightest, but we want the best and brightest from the diversity of backgrounds, whether it's from educational backgrounds, cultural backgrounds.
A cooler like this, one just like this is flying right now in space. And I get to handle it, I get to design it.
So the larger that we can make those structures, the less energy it takes to move them around and get them where they need to go.
It actually takes a lot of imagination to think of ways in which you can replace a specific atom with another one.
The labs are very important because without the labs, we would not have a lot of the technology that we're using today.
Working for the Department of Defense, it's really up to you how far you can take it and what you want to do with these really challenging problems.
Okay. So the other aspect, aside from labs, of my job is that as of last year, I actually adopted the whole STEM development office. So now all of the work that the DoD does in STEM now falls under my office, and it's actually quite it's a broad portfolio. We're looking at really. We have actually programs that go all the way from K through graduate school. Our biggest program is probably, our biggest program is the SMART, it's a Science, Math, and Research for Transformation Scholarship Program. It's a scholarship for service program. And that is for every year of school that the DoD pays for, the scholar owes 1 year of time at one of our laboratories or somewhere within DoD. That's our largest program. I think this year we picked up close to 350 students that will be starting on that program in September. It used to be we used to pick up students starting in freshman year, but now we pick up students from sophomore year and up, mainly because we found at freshman year that there's minimum grade point requirement and there's certain standards, and none of that information is available before the sophomore year. So it starts in the sophomore year and goes all the way through graduate school. And at any one time, it pays for, I think, up to 5 years of school. We've had students that have done a bachelor degree in the program and then went back a few years later and pursued a graduate degree in the program as well. So it's by far our largest program. And we do this for a number of reasons. One is that the DoD really has a strong feeling that having a STEM literate citizenry is really good for the nation. It not only it increases the number of folks that are STEM literate that could possibly work for a DoD, but not only work for DoD, it could also work for any of the ancillary parts of the department. So, and even the outside parts. So if they work for Boeing, or they work for Lockheed, or they work for Northrop Grumman, it doesn't matter. You know, that they're still benefiting. You know, we still gain a benefit from that individual. So we really feel that, you know, expanding that pipeline and doing so at an early age really will help us in the future. And so we have a fair amount of investment in that. Our second biggest program after the scholarship program, the Smart Scholarship Program, is our program that we do in partnership with the National Math and Science Initiative. And that's a program where we particularly impacts schools where there's a large military-dependent population. And for those schools that have a large military-dependent population, we're installing the college readiness program, which is ostensibly we're getting teachers to expand the number of advanced placement classes that they teach in their schools, and particularly the science-based AP classes. So that's our next biggest program. And then after that, we participate in, we sponsor, like for the first robotics competition, we sponsor about between 800 and 900 teams for that event across both across the country and international participants. We sponsor it's actually a competition, math counts for, I think that's for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. We sponsor their regional, some of their regional events as well as their national event. So those are the big ones. And then in addition, there is, of course, the CEE program. We sponsor students both here, and I was fortunate enough to have a dinner with those students. But we sponsor those students here. But we also have a program that we started just this year, and we have the first cohort in place. And it's a program it's a pilot program that's only available actually to you, because it's available only to alumni of the RSI program. But what we do with those students is we actually partner them up with a mentor at one of our laboratories, and then and allow them to do research for the summer at one of our laboratories. So this year, I think we had 10 students at laboratories. We started this year late in the cycle, and I think a number of the students had already decided what they were going to do. But so next year we're going to start a little bit earlier. But we ended up having only we were only able to place the students at 3 of our laboratories. One was the Air Force Research Laboratory in Dayton. One was an Army Medical Research Laboratory in Maryland, and then another Army Research Laboratory in Aberdeen, Proving Grounds in Maryland. So if you to just further, harp on why we have this investment. If you take a look at just in terms of gross domestic product of a nation, looking at how at all of the when innovation has occurred within a nation, you've seen their productivity rise and their gross domestic product rise. And so, in terms of trying to maintain that pace, and why we invest in STEM is we want to be able to keep that curve growing. And as you see that, right now, if you take a look at that the colorful diagram in the bottom, you'll see that we're not the big. We're still the single largest nation in terms of GDP, but you'll see that there are a lot of countries. There are a few countries that are not that far behind. So to maintain our readiness, we need that next generation of science and engineers. And then it's another example, more kind of more of the same. If you take a look at how fast technology gets adopted, you notice that that things like a dishwasher or a washing machine took quite a long time to get to be a ubiquitous device in in U.S. households, almost 70 plus years. But if you take a look at other technology, and what we're finding now is that the uptake is much faster. So, kind of like my experience is that when I was reviewing a science competition that I judged in, I was looking at the quality of the work and the type of work that the students were doing. It's amazing that the work that they were doing in high school now is probably what it's like when I was in probably like a senior in college. So you find that now the technology is basically not only is it developing at a faster rate, but also at a much earlier stage. Individuals are getting involved with the technology at a much earlier age, and therefore kind of pushing the bounds much earlier than in my time. And you find that it's like, and this is reiterated in a number of statistics, that 16% of high school students are proficient in math and science. You find that only 19% of bachelor's degrees in the U.S. are awarded in STEM areas. And then even if they are awarded, 70% of the graduates with STEM degrees are not necessarily employed in a STEM job. And then, and compound that, figure that we'll probably need 1 million more STEM professionals in the next decade. There's a real calling for that ability to prime that pipeline, and that's what part and parcel what the DoD is hoping to do. And so the DoD is actually the single largest employer of scientists and engineers in the federal government. I think we have, I think the DoD civilian workforce is, scientists and engineers make up about 100,000 people in the DoD, and that's about a third of the DoD civilian workforce are scientists and engineers. And we typically, there's a turnover rate about between 6 to 10% of those scientists and engineers every year. So you can do the math. About 10,000 scientists and engineers, at a max, we probably hire in a year. Many of those into our laboratories. So when I just, I'd mentioned before the SMART Scholarship Program, and just some stories associated with a couple of our SMART scholars. All of them had to, obtain their PhDs through those programs. So Caitlin Rivers on the left, she was actually graduated with a PhD in biosciences from Virginia Tech. And when she finished her degree, she actually ended up working for the U.S. Army Public Health Command. And not one of our laboratories, but interestingly enough, what she was doing was she was actually working on the Ebola epidemic. And she was looking at, grabbing all of the data associated with the virus and where it was impacting, and basically looking at analyzing all that data to help other parts of the lab come up with their vaccine. We have Christina Droneberg, Ph.D. from I believe the University of Arizona. No, I'm sorry, University of Colorado, and she's actually now working at one of our Navy labs, the Naval Air Station in Patuxent River in Maryland. And she's actually looking at trying to harness sound and transfer and trying to convert sound into energy as part of her work. And so she was able to get some preliminary results that allow her to apply for a patent on that technique. And then an interesting thing about Christina is that she was actually a Navy brat. So meaning that her parents were in the Navy, and so she really found it really she found it really, she was very enthusiastic about working for the Navy because she felt that it was both giving back for the years of service that her parents were in the Navy, but also because of the love of her country that she developed as being a Navy dependent. She really enjoyed working for the Navy. Actually, she enjoys working for the Navy, current tense. And then last we have Ariana Nicolini, and she graduated from the University of Arizona, and she's now working for the Air Force Research Laboratory in Dayton, Ohio. And so I have to read this because this is much like that initial video. But so her job consists of droplet-based immunoassay of nanofibrous surfaces for multiplex dual detection of bacteria. So in a nutshell, what she's working on is looking at how to develop assays to detect both Salmonella and E. coli, and being able to use actually an iPhone to quantify the detection. So she's really keen on that work. And then, so that comes to close to the end of my talk. I'd say that I actually started off as a scientist and engineer. I started off working after I finished my graduate degree in electrical engineering. I went to the Army Research Laboratory, and that was at the time they were located in New Jersey. And I was working with them on lasers and electro-optics, particularly how we could use electro-optic devices to cut down the size, weight, and power associated with phased array radars. And then it was from that point, I transitioned from a technology and working on technology to doing more policy work, and which is what I do mostly now, is all policy, dealing with the laboratories, dealing with universities, dealing with organizations like CE, RSI on this program, dealing with FIRST Robotics and other organizations to really push the DoD goals of both having a laboratory that is responsive to the military needs and developing that pipeline of STEM literate students that could eventually, if we're lucky, a number will end up in our laboratories. I think, and then if you're interested, there are a number of resources you can look up about the DoD, about my office, about our STEM work. We do have a website, the top one that gets to our office. We also have a website, Defense Innovation Marketplace, but that's more if you're interested in tech transfer, or if you've got something that you think the DoD may be interested in buying, or if you're looking to work on a project. That is probably a better site. We do have a Twitter site at DoD Innovation. It much like everything in the government, it's very managed, and so it may not be. We try to get timely output on there, but I can't guarantee that we always succeed in that. But that we do have that available to us, and then we have our STEM site is dodstem.us. We actually, it's another tale of government bureaucracy, but we set it up dodstem.us because that allows us a little bit more flexibility in how we do the site. If we had done it on the .gov site, then there would be layers of paperwork to fill out before we post anything on it, and we could never update it. But those are all sites that you can research if you're interested. So with that, I would like to open up the floor for questions.